Welcome to Total Innovation, the podcast where we explore the different aspects of innovation, transformation, and change. From the disruptive minds of startup founders to the strategic meeting rooms of global giants and the thought leaders shaping the future, we bring you the stories of change makers. Each episode promises a fresh perspective from both sides of the mic. We embrace the diversity of thoughts, backgrounds, and experiences that drive corporate renewal and evolution. The Total Innovation journey will take us through the challenges, the victories, and the lessons learned in the ever-evolving landscape of innovation. Join us as we explore the narratives of those shaping the market, those writing about it, and those doing the hard work. This is Total Innovation, where every voice counts and every story matters. This podcast is brought to you by Wazoku, helping to change the world one idea at a time. Today we're joined by Kyle Basler-Reeder from ExxonMobil. As you'll hear shortly from Kyle, his journey to open innovation began as an exploration geophysicist. Pretty cool. This podcast, over 2 parts, digs into how Kyle designed, built, and now leads ExxonMobil's corporate-wide open innovation program. Building a high-impact capability from a standing start in less than 18 months, helping teams across the company to solve some of the most challenging problems and explore new opportunity generation strategies, leveraging external resources. In the first episode, we dig into the background and foundations for success. In part 2, we dig into lessons learned, scaling, and so much more. So, without further ado, let's start first of all with a bit of background and a bit of motivation. Can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your personal journey, and the role that led you to this, this thing from exploration geophysicist to open innovation guru?
Yeah, well, thank you, Simon, for the warm introduction. My pleasure to be here as well. Really excited to connect with your community. Yeah, I would say my journey, it's been a windy one, exploring various activities. I do find that other open innovation leaders, I do find they often have these windy paths. So I don't think I'm alone, but yeah, my journey started at ExxonMobil, exploration geophysicist, as you said. That's basically a fancy way of saying I built 3D models of the Earth. I helped people look for where to drill wells, where to discover new hydrocarbon deposits. And then after we've discovered them, how are we going to produce those? Where are we going to put all the wells? How many wells do we need, et cetera? So started really in that space. Had a good run there, 5 years of sort of various technical assignments. I had a business assignment, got to learn about, natural gas, various types of things. And then what happened is I started on these sort of broadening assignments, if you will. The first one was a machine learning research role for a year. So AI, that's something that I studied in my master's thesis and kind of picked back up on that. Did some imaging work for a year, did some other types of stuff. And then what happened is we had an opportunity that came. In ExxonMobil, there was a recognition that we needed to be more externally leveraged. We needed to get out there. It's a big world. There's a lot of capability out there. And at the time, this was something that some teams did really well, other teams not so much. And every team had a different tool they liked to use, whether it was working with vendors, maybe labs, academics, etc. So what they did is they decided to make a full-time position. That was about 3 years ago, roughly 2.5 years ago. That position was called External Leveraging Coordinator. That's how I got started in open innovation. And I got to tell you, it was a bit of a shock for me, again, with this very technical background, sort of saying, why me? Okay, this is interesting. Well, it turns out that I think that background actually paid off. So when I came into the role, really was trying to get oriented. What are we trying to do here? I conducted a lot of interviews. I talked to about 200 people, 150 or so inside. And I also started talking to people outside the company. And from that role, I developed some guidelines on 3 things. What are the types of things we should take outside? What are the types of things that you should do for those activities? So if you go outside, should we go to a lab? Should we go to a vendor? Who should we be talking to? Who should help us? And then for each one of those, I put together some tips, tricks, guidelines. So that was kind of the front end of this thing. Open innovation comes online about 1.5 years ago, as you said. That's a bit of a different ballgame. I think we're going to unpack that more in this call.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit of the preface on how I got to this assignment.
That journey from exploration geophysicist through to there, is you're right. There is no regular pathway for some of these things, right? And I think there's an element of personal motivation and personal intrigue as you start to unpack what is this open innovation capability. I know from some of our previous conversations that curiosity definitely piqued you. But what was that sort of personal inspiration and motivation that led you to choose this pathway? Because I'm sure that there was there's a fork in the road, an opportunity opens up, and you're choosing something, and it's quite a different thing than you'd been doing, right? Because it's very hands-on the work that you were doing, like project oriented and applied. And now you're going into building a capability for the organization, right? Like it's a much, maybe you didn't even think about it like that at the start, or maybe you did. But what was that personal motivation that piqued your interest to think, this is an area to come spend a few years of building skills and expertise?
So great question. There's two things that come to mind. One is if we go back in time, I was in that imaging assignment. I'm in the research company. We did this sort of innovation program, if you will. And in that program, it's the standard idea box sort of thing. Give me your ideas. They pick the best ideas. You pitch them to the management. Management picks a few of them. I think about 7 of them. And I was one of those, us projects. Okay, so I did this kind of innovation project. That was the first time that I learned innovation is like a science. This isn't just new ideas. This isn't invention. There's a whole science to it. There's a process. That was really a game changer for me. I delved into it. The quote at the end of that first project was, "Kyle, you've set the gold standard for innovation at ExxonMobil." So I really just delved in. I was passionate about it. Later on, we did another idea box thing. This time, I had a kind of an out there idea. I basically said, we have this technology that we use. I said, why don't we use that technology in this other company's software? And they were kind of wondering, what are you talking about? We're going to give one of our imaging softwares to this other company that does voice communication? It was really this out there thing. And there were a few conversations that came from that. They said, look, your idea, it's kind of interesting. But what's more interesting is this mindset that you had of taking some of our technology off the shelf and farming it out to these other companies. So those were some of the seeds where I think I kind of got started. The next year, I was a senior mentor on this innovation program. And then I got to sort of some mastery because now I'm coaching other people. So I think that's a part of the reason why I was chosen for the job. Those two kind of inklings that, hey, this guy, he's kind of interested in innovation. And he's thinking externally in these new ways that we're not thinking about.
So internal innovation led to the birth of open innovation. There you go.
That's exactly right.
Interesting journey. And I guess you got the bug a little bit at that point in time as well. And I know you've gone out and spoken to a lot of different practitioners and folks from different industries as you've gone through this. Could you just step back from that a little bit and talk to us about so what is open innovation at ExxonMobil? Like what is it that you started to create?
I'm really glad you asked me that question because I think a lot of folks, when I start talking to them, they say, okay, what are you talking about? Open innovation? What do you mean? So let me give you my take. So at ExxonMobil, here you are, you're on a team and you're trying to solve a problem. You have your immediate team, you're in the weekly team meeting, they know what you're trying to do. And if they have an idea, they'll share it with you. Now I call that level 0. Okay, that's a level 0 collaboration. Level 1, you might have these adjacent teams. You all report to the same place, but you're working on different things. That's a level 1. Level 2, there's maybe a different function next to you. Level 3, there's a whole different part of the company. Now, me over here drilling the wells, now there's somebody over in a refinery. Well, what are they doing? Level 4, for me, you're kind of getting outside the company, but these are the places you always talk to. These are the vendors. These are the professors that you're familiar with, the literature you're familiar with. You're getting into these higher levels. Level 5, you're kind of getting into the places you don't talk to. Level 6, you're getting into the adjacent industries. So these are industries that you never go to the agriculture conference. You don't go to the pharmaceutical conference. You don't even know what's there. And then kind of the final level is this global crowd and these people that have completely different experiences. So what I tell people is open innovation is all of the above. More than half of my projects, we define the problem. I connect them to another internal team like this level 3, I might say. And they say, wow, this is amazing. We didn't even know there was a whole team doing this stuff over here in this other part of the company. That's actually more than half of my projects end there. Now, when we go outside, you can get into academics, vendors, labs, etc. I certainly have the tips, tricks, and guidelines on those, but those are not the things that I'm really passionate about. Those are not the things that I really focus on. What I focus on, number one by far, global crowdsourcing. Taking your problem outside and having millions of people try to solve it. Number two, global requests for proposals. Same thing, but I'm not seeking ideas. I want a proposal. What's your product? How are you going to solve the problem? What can I buy? Or we can develop it together. And then number three are these open talent models. Getting out there, connecting to talent quickly, on demand. As you said, I actually used that strategy when I got started. I found about 50 open innovation leaders around the world. Connect on LinkedIn. Hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'm getting started. Would you be willing to help me out? So those are the three things that I personally work on. But yeah, my definition, it starts inside the company because it's amazing what you can find. These silos, you go from one to the other. This team's been working on your problem for 20 years. And it's amazing to me when I can do that because it's so easy and then I just walk away. Those are probably some of the highest value things that I do.
Some incredible tips in there. So look, we're gonna walk through this as a bit of a chronology, and we're coming to the end of the first part of that chronology, which is some of the background and motivation. I like those tiers that you spoke about. The further away you get from the core, the more you go out to the open world. Before you get into sort of strategy and implementation, right? Like before you got there, like persuading the business, right? You've got this idea. It might sound a little bit crazy to many people, right? So before you began even, right? Before you got the, yes, Carl, we can do this. What were the challenges that you faced in just getting this program, this idea, this concept to a point where you could start to implement it and start to build a strategy around it?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is I am very thankful because I was empowered. I went back a few weeks later and what I concluded was, look, there's not a flow chart out there. There's not something that a problem comes in and then I can just flow chart it out. Well, these are the things that we go inside. These are what we go outside. Okay, now if you're going to go inside, here's what you can do. If you're going to go outside, here's the right option. I basically 3 or 4 weeks in, I said, look, I'm going to have to build this from scratch. And I said, and that might take me 4 months. And I was given that space to do these interviews. I was doing about 5 interviews a day. I was meeting people externally. I was very empowered. So I would say when you're starting off in an open innovation program, I think that you need some space. You need some time to explore and learn what's out there. What do we have? I would say after about the 3rd month or so, I wasn't really learning a lot in those interviews. So what that tells me, I think I did a good job capturing the institutional knowledge and I was documenting it as I went. I had time to digest. By the way, 1 hour interview, 2 hours on the back end. That's a good rule of thumb for folks if you want to use this strategy. Right. So I had the space early on. The mission was needed. We needed to be more external. So I had that support from higher up in the organization. This fit sort of a strategy, if you will. So having the tie to initial strategy, having the space, I think those were the key elements of success to kind of get it off the ground, if you will, to kind of get to just the table stakes, if you will. I think you need about half a year and you need some high level support to help you navigate that early phase because you're not going to have a big return on investment documenting and putting together tips, tricks, and guidelines.
Yeah. And I think in those early days, you were sort of down at the desk helping to write some of the paperwork to sit behind all of this as well, right? So you really get your hands dirty on this one of helping the business to get into a place where it could start to get into strategy and implementation.
And I would say that actually gets into what I might call phase 2. So phase 1 is sort of the analysis phase. Phase 2, we could call it the early implementation phase. And just like you said, okay, great. Well, guess what I learned? I want to do crowdsourcing. I can't just turn that on. Okay, it's going to take some time. What platform am I going to use? I need to look at that. And then when it's ready to bring the platform in, that's going to take some time as well, right? This stuff doesn't happen overnight. I had to get some funding in place, et cetera. So yes, that phase, again, it's going to take 6 to 12 months after the analysis to just get this thing built. I had to go get alignment with a bunch of different sort of senior stakeholders, right? And say, hey, we're going to be doing open innovation. these are the things I want to focus on: crowdsourcing, RFPs, open talent. How does that sound? And then go have meeting with their reports, and go have meeting with the reports of the reports, and try to get kind of everybody's buy-in. Different teams have very different cultures, and it's going to take you some time in that middle phase to go learn the culture. Is it they don't have enough time. They don't have enough budget. They don't have enough people. They're very sensitive about IP. What are those challenges? And then you have to custom build your open innovation program to meet those needs. Again, I feel like I was very empowered and given this space to explore. Now, in that middle phase, there started to be, some questions saying, hey, we really need to do some projects. You need to show something, right? And so there, you do need to start kind of, I would say within 6 months, you're going to need to start doing something, some type of advising, little projects. If you already have existing capabilities in the company, try to leverage those and try to get a few shots on the goal to get something on the board.
Yeah, getting started and getting out of the talk is pretty important. Before we get into that and like talking about how you went about selecting, the partners that could support you in delivering it, did you find that people understood the thing that you were asking them to do? So we're crowdsourcing. I guess RFPs are a little bit more familiar, but perhaps more within a procurement sense, right? Like why would an open talent team or an open innovation team be doing RFPs may have been a question. And then open talent itself, like was that something that was understood, or you had to take time to educate the business into just what are these concepts? They sound a bit wild.
I would say the organization is very heterogeneous. Certain parts of the organization, I would go talk to them about these techniques. By the end, they were giving me tips and tricks, and they were saying, yeah, we have this whole document here on how to do XYZ. We have this whole webpage with examples of ABC. And every time that happened, I was integrating. So anything that I would learn, I would integrate. Some teams, they would basically say, Kyle, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't really like it, but I understand that this is important because I understand that we do need to be more external. That's what I've been told as well. And I agree that the things that you're bringing, these look like really good tools. And then they would just slowly come on the journey. And then there were some teams that I went and talked to, and I think their conclusion was fair. They basically said, this is not a good fit for the kind of things we do here. And I never got another call again. I think that's perfectly okay. But yeah, I would say very heterogeneous. Be prepared for crash and burn failure meetings that you come out the other end and you just go, wow, that did not go very well. That is totally okay. Because you know what? There were other meetings that I came out and it was just felt amazing. We already had a project we started scoping out. Maybe they taught me something. I would get quotes like this: I'm so excited to hear about crowdsourcing. I've been hearing about it. This is really cool. How can I get started? How can I help? So also be prepared for those champions that are going to come out of the woodwork. Is there something you can do to kind of empower them? Give them some materials. Give them some type of virtual assignment where they can really start to help you, because those people, those are the ones that really keep you going from a motivation standpoint, is seeing that passion and energy right out of the gate, right as soon as you start presenting.
Knowing you're not the only one fighting this thing that seemed like a great idea, but maybe wasn't, right? Is that you start to build this network of champions that do get it and become your ambassadors in the business. And really you're operating like a startup inside the business, right? Doing your own sales and marketing and storytelling and other things. So maybe I can lead you into that of like, what were some of the tools and techniques you used to build that internal support and those local champions?
Yeah, well, what I would say is early days, what I tried to do, I tried to get a very firm grasp through these about 150 discussions I had on what have you done externally? What went well? What didn't go well? And if they would tell me something didn't go well, really try to dig in a little bit. Well, why is that? What occurred? And then try to go find solutions to what they said and try to have something ready. So number one, I would say is this is a culture change journey for I think every company pretty much. If you're building an open innovation program, people are there. It's a culture change, right? And so one of the first reactions in a culture change is, well, I don't like it. Here's why. I don't like it because of A. I don't like it because of C. And I definitely don't like it because of D. So what you need to be doing is be prepared and have really credible answers. Or there were a lot of calls where I said, that's a really good point. Let me follow up on that. And you know, that is not the way you want to go. Be prepared. Number two, what are the past examples where it went well? What was the value added? You need to be able to explain, here's something that I found. We did it 5 years ago. Now, I didn't do this work, but I think this is a great example. If you can't find that, you might want to use some analogs. Here's something that another company did. Look how this worked out. This looks very successful. That was kind of the early days. As I started to get a couple projects, I tried to talk about work that I did. And nowadays, it's the last phase. Those people who did the projects, I have them come and talk about what they did. So this isn't my program. I give the frame of open innovation, what it is, why we should care. And then I say, okay, you know, Sarah, why don't you come and give your presentation? And they look over and they say, oh, well, yeah, she's in our function. Okay, so that adds a lot of credibility. That's kind of the final phase, I would say.
Yeah, and that's very much back to that point of this is it's a capability, right, that we're building for the organization. And ultimately you want to get that framework and that playbook out there and let people run with it. And as we'll see, you've done a great job of moving from POC to an increasingly scaled flywheel of capability in the business in a remarkable short period of time. Before we get there, and I think that'll be my next question after this, just talk a little bit about the work you did to find and then form some of the key partnerships and collaborations that you've got, both internal and external, because you can't do this, I think, without finding the right external support to power this open innovation.
Well, I think what I would say, I think my program is evidence that my program works. So when you look at the open talent space, the willingness of individuals to have a conversation, you know, this isn't something fancy. It's just, hey, I'm getting started in open innovation. I see that on your LinkedIn, you've been doing this for 5 years. I'm wondering if we could have a conversation. And it was amazing the people that would come and they could give me some guidance on like, well, where to get started. There's a lot of good communities out there. Join these communities. Just start showing up at the call. Just listen. What are they saying? Other types of tools, obviously web searches. But I think the people part was the key. I think asking other people about their experiences, what works for you, what didn't work for you. I think having those conversations, looking very openly, I could have easily just said, oh, well, here's something that we used 5 years ago. I'll just use that. I did not do that. I tried to be very objective. I tried to think about what are the different dimensions. And for me personally, when it comes to platforms, I really prioritized platforms that had a lot of history, a lot of runtime, and I really wanted a platform that was credible in terms of their ability to kind of mentor and guide me. So I wasn't necessarily just looking for a certain set of features. I was really looking for that credibility, that mentorship, and I think that, in my opinion, I think that has paid off. Having those people that have done this for 20 years, those are the types of folks I think that you need in your corner in that first year.
Yeah, because it's tough, right? So yeah, the more people standing alongside you, giving you guidance and helping you to learn and avoid some of the lessons and pitfalls that have already been done before, because it's not easy, right? So let's talk a little bit around that from the business is like great, like sounds wonderful. Let's get started. So talk about how about you got from that first, single proof of concept, how was that one selected? What can you share about that? And to building an embedded capability. This is quite a big question, right? This is the meat of how do we get out of a great idea and sort of early strategy into walking the walk, learning some lessons, and then in your case, remarkably building like incredible demand. As you said up front, less than 12 months, right? We talk about this as less than 18 months, but challenge through, I think, is less than 18 months of just incredible success. So what did we learn? What did we do? What can others do that would let them repeat that success?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot. And so it is something that I have the luxury, I've had to think about this and reflect on this. And I've answered this and I thought about how I answered it. What I would tell you, I firmly believe the key was thinking about this as a marketing effort. So if you're a marketing person, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can tailor your message so that your audience hears it. So again, think about it as a culture thing. Think about being empathetic to the person you're presenting to. Why is this person going to care about open innovation? Is it going to save them time? Is it going to save them money? What is it? Do they have a really stubborn problem? And then I think thinking more about just the numbers. Okay, so who are you presenting to? I often have this question. Well, how did you decide the groups to go talk to? And I will admit to you that I didn't really think a whole lot about it. I printed out the organizational chart. I saw that there were about 200 teams total in the technology organization. I went and talked to senior leaders for each of those functions, and I said, tell me about this group of 12 teams. What do they do? Which ones should I talk to? Here's kind of what open innovation is. And they might say, well, these teams here, those probably aren't the best fit for this sort of thing. These teams, this would be really good. And I say, okay, great. Well, tell me more. Like who's the supervisor? What are the sorts of things they're working on? So getting to know and going really broad. So at the beginning, I would say number one thing that was most important is organizational readiness. Who's ready to get in the game? Who is ready to go and execute a project? Now, you don't know ahead of time which teams are ready and which are not. So don't try to engineer it. It's a numbers game. Get out there. Think about the empathy. Think about the audience. And then, I would just say, just get out there. So I've actually presented open innovation to about 130 teams by now. I try to keep those sessions small. I learned early on, if I talk to 200 people, I don't get any leads. If I talk to 100 people, I don't get any leads. There's some psychological thing there that I'm no expert on, but what I can tell you is this. You get 20 people in the room, you have a really good conversation, maybe even a tough conversation, but the people who don't like it, they're able to share with you why, you're able to address it, and then it's small enough that the people who like it will then say, yeah, I agree that that's a challenge, but I think there's a big opportunity here, or hey, I saw this thing last week on LinkedIn or whatever it is. So I think a numbers game, getting the boots on the ground, get out there, have the conversations. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of difficult conversations because they will happen. And then once you start getting those projects going, you find the people that are ready, the job becomes so much easier because now I'm saying, yeah, okay, let me pull something up here. Okay, here's something that we're doing right now. Here's something that we closed last month. I think those types of things, that's like 5 to 10 times more effective than here's a bunch of theory and concepts. Here's some things I heard about on the internet. So the key was the getting on the boots on the ground and then getting the early projects, and then it just kind of snowballs from there.
Thanks, Kyle. This has been an incredible discussion so far with so much insight and information shared for our listeners. I'm really excited for part 2, in which we'll dig deeper into the lessons learned, scaling the capability, and so much more. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for listening to this episode of the Total Innovation Podcast. Please subscribe for updates on upcoming shows and for all things Total Innovation. Check out Wazoku at www.wazoku.com. And thank you, Kyle, again for your time today. It's been incredible.
Thank you for the great discussion.